Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you. You're watching a brand new episode of Encounter. Today, our guest is the Provost of Anant National University. Provost can be defined as the Vice Chancellor, in other words, the one who's in charge of a university. And Anant National University is the first design university in India. It's located in Ahmedabad, and our guest is none other than Professor Anunaya Chaubey. Very warm welcome to you, and thank you for being here. And thank you for coming all the way from India to Mauritius.
Thank you, Roshan. It's a pleasure.
And of course, this is not the first time that you're in Mauritius. You were here, you were part of the special envoy or convoy to set up the Rabindranath Tagore Institute in 2008. Why was it so important that you were part of it to set up the Rabindranath Tagore Institute in Mauritius? Because it has a lot to do with literature, and you're involved a lot in terms of history, art, design. So tell us a little bit more on this before we get deeper into our conversation.
I was called here to set up the Department of Arts and Crafts at Rabindranath Tagore Institute. The mandate was for me to set up this department to fulfill the vocational requirements, say get teachers and people from the community to come and learn arts and crafts and to earn a livelihood out of it.
How did this passion begin for you? Because you have an experience of over 30 years. You've been teaching for 33 years, I guess? Mm-hmm. Yes. So how did it begin for you?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and that really take me back further than 33 years. So I was born in a family which was very literary. My father was a poet and a professor of literature. And I grew up in a neighborhood where perhaps greatest of Indian literatures lived. Ramdhari Singh Dinkar and Phanishwarnath Renu, both of them, were neighbors. And as a kid, my father would take me to their home. And both of these giants, so particularly Ramdhari Singh Dinkar would ask me to just memorize his great poem, Rashmi Rathi, which I did promptly. And then I would be asked to recite it, and they would all find it very funny, which kind of stayed with me. I still remember, a few lines.
Can we have a few lines of your favorite lines?
In fact, I have animated the poem, part of it. It's Krishna Chetavani, I would just remember a couple of lines. Dagmag, dagmag, diggaj dole, Bhagavan kupit hokar bole, aa Duryodhan, bandh mujhe, zanjeer badhakar, saadh mujhe. So this is what I would do. Then, when I was 3 years or 4 years old, but of course, not the way I do it now, and I would be lisping and... there were books and diverse, indiscriminate reading that used to happen at my place. Atmosphere, I was lucky, was very creative. And I think that kind of rubbed off on me, and I always thought that, what I was doing, the paintings that I would do, doodling and sketching that I would do, it was something that everyone else could do. It was something that, came very naturally to me.
So can I say that coming from parents who are artists, it was kind of a right environment. You had the right neighbors, and this led you rightly to what you have been doing for the past 3 decades.
Yep.
Now let's get deeper into the conversation. I feel, from my observation, that people who are involved in poetry, literature, and even design and artists, they are less and less nowadays. Would you agree to that?
I would agree with it. I think if you look at the general population, if you look in a classroom that you may be a part of, you would find that there are not many, interested in arts, interested in poetry, interested in literature, interested in lateral thinking.
Is it because someone can't earn a decent living of it?
I mean, that is the conception that they have, that you can't really make a good living, out of any of these interests.
But also parents also tell children that you will not live off it, probably.
Absolutely, you're bang on. So this has been the issue, and this has been my experience. Look, each child has a native intelligence, has a native strength, has a native talent. I could have something, which comes naturally to me with respect to, say, music or sports or poetry or reading or writing or singing, whatever it is. But given the concerns that the parents have, say they would insist that a child do these things later, and focus just on study, score great, so that you get great score and get a great employment with lots of money.
The fact that people are not being able to express themselves, they are not able to ask the right questions. They are just following a mad rat race. And I feel you're not one of them. And where have we gone wrong over the generations? If you could implement something, what would you do?
What has happened simply is this, that we are all looking for security, a good future, within quotes, because we don't know what good future is, whether it's a future which is assured by good money or just working in a rut, but you're getting good money and you feel you're secure, or it's a good future with a soul that is happy, a soul that makes you feel fulfilled, where you really carry out and deliver your potential, explore all your interests, and the sign of a living being, forever remain curious. I think it's curiosity, which is the first casualty, so when we get into an education system. We are not supposed to be curious. We are not supposed to ask many questions. We are just supposed to mug things up and regurgitate, whatever we have mugged up in our answer sheet, so that we score, great numbers, great marks. And we are judged on basis of what we have scored, because what you have scored will get you a good job,
Yes.
which will get you good money, right? So I think this is where we have gone terribly, terribly wrong. We have not been allowed to pursue our own strengths. We have not been really allowed to look at the world from out of so many different windows, that are there around us. We are pushed into specializing, you try and you're pushed into becoming, say, a specialist in computer science or economics or electronics, at the expense of other interests and other meaningful things happening around you. If you become a computer scientist, it's possible that you know nothing about history, politics, philosophy, and a whole lot of other activities and knowledge disciplines, knowledge domains that are there around you. And I think this is what has caused us this rather sad situation.
What advice would you start giving to parents?
What we have started doing in India, and Anant National University is an example, we have to incorporate in a big way liberal arts. Even if you're specializing, we have a School of Architecture, we have School of Design, but we also have School of Creative Practices and Entrepreneurship. School of Creative Practices and Entrepreneurship is the hub of liberal arts knowledge domains. So even if you are going to become a designer or an architect, it's imperative that you know the world, you understand the context in which you would be practicing your specialization, whether you're an architect or a designer or a computer scientist, whatever it is. So you may be writing algorithms, you may be creating apps, you have the ability, but you don't know that there is hunger, there is illiteracy. You won't really be able to deploy your specialization to answer those problems, to find a solution for these issues. You would just find a job, and the job will have you, say, do things which perhaps are commercial in nature. So you need to develop a big picture. You need to understand the context in which you would be practicing your specialization, right? Whatever it is, right? And that's why educational institutes must have a community connection, offer community connection for the students, must offer a range of liberal arts subjects, so that a student gets an opportunity to build perspective, understand that for any problem, climate change, for instance, right? It's not just the air becoming toxic, or there being, say, too much of carbon, emission and pollutants. We have to understand why this happens. So there may be a social reason, there may be a political reason, there could be a historical reason.
Why is it not everyone's responsibility, and why are we not more stressed about it?
Yeah, no, so you understand that there are so many factors responsible, right? And economic, livelihood, for instance, and once you have this big picture, because you get to see the problem from so many different perspectives, you understand the problem better. And if you understand the problem better, you are better placed to solve that problem.
Agree.
Right? That's why liberal arts, that's why contextual, experiential learning should be mandatory in all institutions. This is what we do, and that's why, our faculty, the students, I guess, say, are more well-rounded.
So this leads me nicely to my next question. Is it one of the reasons why you've come to Mauritius again?
Absolutely. I'm here to build partnerships, to make friends, to offer, and also to learn and to offer, students and institutions out here an opportunity to work together, to develop our understanding of, the world that we live in. Because now the world is all one, because you may have different context, but the problems that we are faced with are of the same kind. It's climate change, it's either, sea level rising or global warming. And we have to work together. We have to work collaboratively to find solutions. So I'm here to offer whatever it is that we have acquired. We have partnerships, with institutions across the world, and we want Mauritian institutions to also become a part of this family so that we can deal with these issues. We can work creatively. We can develop a bigger contextual understanding and leverage each other's, equipment, tools, understanding, traditional knowledge to find answers.
You mentioned collaboration, finding answers. If I may ask, what would be the critical part that would be as a trigger so that things move in the right direction?
I think what institutions, across contexts, what they need to understand, what we all need to understand is that there is not much time before things become irreversible, right? So each year, each week, actually, things are worsening. And for institutions, same as individuals, it's imperative that we realize that we have to act fast and not really get lost in ceremonies and rituals and get too bureaucratic, and take time over deciding about something which is staring you in your face, that we have to work together, and we should not take 6 months or 8 months or 1 year to deliberate. It's a crisis phase, and we have to, act with speed, and that is, I think, what should be the trigger, to take quick decisions, because I think it's staring all of us in the face, so what the extreme weather events that have been happening, floods, and I think Mauritius also has its own set of worries,
All right, coming back to your area of specialty related to liberal arts. While listening to your answers, something came to my mind, and I'm wondering, one of the major issues that's happening nowadays is people are disconnecting because we are more on our mobile phones. But whether you indulge into arts or history or poetry, these are the kind of fields that always bring people around, and you always have that human connection. And I think this could be an answer to what we are missing out nowadays in terms of the sharing that we have in person, the human touch, but also meet people in person. Do you think that could also be part of it?
Indeed, that is. I think, we are not meeting enough people, and we are losing out on developing our empathetic skills. And that's the first thing, so we talking about, say, design thinking. How do we approach our world, our context? So if you're living a secluded, cloistered, protected life, there's so much that you miss out on, and kids do, right? So they're not allowed to go here, there, or meet some people or talk to others. What you're doing is you fail to understand some of the crucial experiences of human existence, right? So if you have been, if you're part of a very affluent family, you eat well, you never know what hunger is. No. And if you don't know what hunger is, then you're in no state to find a solution for a problem of that nature. First, it would not occur to you that hunger is a problem because you have yourself not experienced
through no fault of yourself, because it's
exactly.
not a question you would ask yourself.
Right. But what it tells me is that you have not been sufficiently introduced to a reality of life which is experienced by almost everybody.
You mentioned design thinking. Can you define briefly what is design thinking? But also my second question to that would be, what advice could you share with parents, students, everyone, how to go about, how can we start, I wouldn't say start going about it, but how can we plant the seed so that one day it grows into a tree? It takes time. That's what I'm trying to, yeah.
It does. The first step in design thinking is exposure, so that you develop empathy right? You understand life better. You know what poverty is. You know what hunger is. You know what heat is. If you've been living in an air-conditioned, say, chamber, you would never know what global warming is, or, right? So it's empathy. You get to understand life better. You are in a position to identify and acknowledge challenges. And then the second stage of design thinking is for you to deliberate on it, reflect on it, think of it. There is hunger. It's not a nice thing. I need to solve it. And then you ideate, you think, the cerebral part, right? And that is the second stage, when you use your head to think about a solution. And the third part is for you to work on a hypothesis, on an idea, and use your hand or technology to turn that idea into a prototype or a product that could solve that problem, right? So these are the three stages.
Okay. So does that work for kids also then? An advice? Can you share an example of how parents could implement such an initiative with kids?
And I think it does happen organically.
Okay.
The problem is that it's interrupted, it's thwarted, it's stopped. Because why would a kid, say, go out in the sun and play with his friends from, say, a marginalized community? So once we stop it, we are preventing the kid, from acquiring experiences. One, of what it feels like being out there in the sun, what's heat like, and to mingle with a community which perhaps is different from yours, but doesn't mean that it carries less value or less meaning. So it's prevention and stoppages and thwarting which comes in the way. Otherwise, and for instance, my own background, I was free, I was left to explore, there was no, and I've been lucky, whether my school or my friends, we were free to explore, right? And that's the way, because you may fail, it could be a nasty experience, it could be a great experience, there could be a lot of confusion, but confusion is a great thing. What confusion means is that you know that there are so many options. If you're not aware of so many options, what it tells me is that you don't know of other options, you just know one thing, right? So just allow kids to explore. Let them flower, let them become themselves. Don't instill seeds of fear or failure in them.
So are parents overprotecting their kids nowadays?
It has always been the case. It's not that it's
I don't think it's always been the case.
It's always been the case, I would say. So parents are loving beings.
No, I think parents were protecting kids. I think parents are overprotecting kids now, because there's so much fear that they cannot go out, or this is going to happen. Oh, you've had so many good adventures, you've learned so many things. One thing happens and everything stops. So the difference is, from what you just said, is how you were reacting. You were free to roam, but I'm pretty sure it was not always perfect. There were things that did not turn out fine.
That's what I said. So I mean, there'll be failures, there'll be some bad experience, but you have to, that's the learning.
It's okay to fail.
It's okay, absolutely fine to fail, and you won't fail. I mean, you won't succeed if you don't fail. If you start thinking the very first attempt is going to succeed, then you're just being stupid, right? You're bound to fail, So if you're playing guitar, so you'll be striking a few wrong notes.
We'll change a little bit topic. Anant National University, the first design university in India. Can you tell us briefly a little bit about the history, how many years you've been around, and how you have been contributing to the economy of India a bit?
Yeah. So Anunaya National University has been around for 6 years. It's a private university dedicated to design. We teach architecture. We teach climate technology, climate science, climate change. We have 2 fellowships, international fellowships running, one dedicated to the built environment, the world that we live in, the concrete jungle that we are a part of, right? And it's an international fellowship for the simple reason that we have fellows from all over the world studying here, everybody who's concerned about the habitat,
Okay.
right? And it's congested, it's polluted, it's almost inhuman. How can we improve it? And again, what the perspective that we offer is the liberal arts perspective. You look at the built environment from a social, political, historical, political scientist, economic perspective, and you understand that all these factors come together to create your built environment.
Are you trying to shape a better man for tomorrow, a more responsible person?
Absolutely, and only if you become a better man, and a more responsible individual, that your surroundings will become better.
So how has the transition been over the last 6 years then?
I mean, this there has been a tremendous response, right? Even the corporate houses, the recruiters now are looking at the students who come out with a more holistic, a more comprehensive understanding of the world that they live in, because these are people, who understand better, because
Okay.
they have seen the world better. So architecture or design, climate technology, we just try to the paradigm that we follow, the pedagogical paradigm. It's not just the classroom in which you study, right? You learn so much from a diverse peer group coming from different backgrounds, with different questions, and with the community working on the grassroots.
Okay.
The experiential part. So you learn from the book, you go out in team, and you work on community issues, on hunger maybe, or gender rights, or health, or environment, or education. You work on the ground, and that is the real understanding. And then you come back to the classroom. You end up, questioning some of these things that the books tell you, right?
Yes.
But this is experiential learning, a good blend. You have seen it all, you have learned it, and you emerge a more holistic, a more empowered individual, a more sensible, a better person, as you said.
Wow, that's very interesting, and I wish you all the best going forward with this, Professor Chaubey. Your love history with literature and poetry. Let's talk about poetry. Is it something that do you still write a lot? Do you still practice a lot?
I'm not writing poetry anymore, but I have been painting a lot.
You've been painting a lot.
I have been animating a lot. I have been animating a whole lot of poems. I'm developing a course on appreciation of poetry, because I think poetry is not really being appreciated enough. It's not really the most popular interest among people, and I think that the responsibility for there being little interest in poetry is what happens at schools and later in colleges. The way we are required to read poem is something that would kill the interest of a learner in poetry. We're just supposed to paraphrase and not really engage with the depth and the layers and the nuances, that a poem would offer. It's metaphorical thinking, it's deep thinking. The challenge for a poet is to put in few words, a thought that is so dense and so deep and so true. And that is an exercise, the critical thinking exercise that, kids are not allowed to do.
So why is it important for you to animate poems then?
So my plan is to make poems more accessible, help a student to visualize a poem rather than, being forced to look at it just one way.
All right.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm animating these poems. I illustrate, I animate, I set them to music, I do voiceover, I edit. And then you could look these up on Instagram.
How do you feel has been the response so far?
The response has been very, very good, and
I don't think anyone's done that before.
No one has done this before. And I have poems there in English as well as in Hindi. I have poems by T.S. Eliot, by Bob Dylan. But I think it's the most important thing. What it does is helps you develop a metaphorical way of thinking. A metaphorical way of thinking would simply mean that we have that fast, fluid, creative brain that can establish connections which between two things, which normally would not lend themselves to a connection, right? But you can do it because that's how you think.
That is very important.
Right.
I hope people do realize.
And this is what sets a poet or an artist apart from a general, nice, intelligent person. Because a nice and intelligent person ordinarily, routinely, normally would be quantitative, would be linear, logical in thinking.
All right, Professor, we've almost come to the end of this encounter. Anything you would like to add before we conclude it?
I would just like to see Mauritian youth acquire the critical thinking ability, the creative ability, and for institutions to really become cognizant of the contemporary situation that are faced with, and we all work together and create a world that is better, healthy, safer, and that rejoices in poetry.
Well, if I may add, anything that is done genuinely, normally, it happens. So I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you, Roshan.
And thank you very much for taking time out to share your experience with us in the studios of the NBC, and I'm very grateful to have you with us here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this episode of Encounter. If you have any questions, queries on the guest or on the topic discussed today, drop an email. It's encounter@nbc.net.mu. Until the very next program, goodbye.